Hello and welcome to IDFC First Bank Presents Leaders of Tomorrow Season 11. I'm Sunanda Jayaseelan. On the show tonight, we're talking all things travel and hospitality, and what better to be discussing in these hot summer months. First up, a conversation with someone that a lot of us are familiar with, Airbnb. Our second conversation tonight is with ixigo. Amanpreet Singh Bajaj of Airbnb joining us here on the show. Amanpreet, good that you could take the time to really speak with us about what's happening in the hospitality space, and who better than you, a brand that's been so innovative and disruptive, including here in the domestic market. And let's start today's conversation by first asking you, we're working with the central or the overarching theme of Ideas for New India. I would love for you to kick off today's interview by talking about the ideas for New India when it comes to the hospitality space.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for giving me an opportunity to share our thoughts. I think when you talk about New India, one thing is very clear, that technology will play a key role. And so technological innovations and constant innovation around offerings and making it easier for people to discover new places, then book those new places and have good experiences is going to be critical from a New India perspective if I talk about the travel and hospitality sector. Okay. I think the other thing that would be of focus would be travel to be more inclusive, right? What we have seen is during the pandemic, and as we kind of get out of the pandemic, there has been a rise of a conscious traveler. And when I say the rise of a conscious traveler, people are now making very responsible as well as conscious choices in terms of the places they want to go to or the kind of accommodation that they want to choose. In fact, many surveys have indicated that people now increasingly want to know what impact they would have on communities when they make these travel choices, sure. Both economically and socially. And so for travel to be more inclusive, for more communities to get benefit from the tourism dollars and the new tourism revolution that is coming in would be very important. The third bit from a New India perspective, I believe that, and we're definitely seeing already good trends around this, is how the government is creating a positive ecosystem and creating infrastructure that facilitates access to new tourism destinations. The fact that there is a big push, given that we have assumed the G20 presidency in 2023, and the fact that the tourism and heritage destinations is a top priority for the government, and the fact that we're having so many meetings to the run-up of the summit at almost like 50 destinations, it's clearly top of mind for the government of India. And I think it's important for all stakeholders in the industry to come together to create an ecosystem that creates a more holistic and a more regenerative tourism play in India. And lastly, I would say that the demographic mix of India is something that we should look out for. India is a very young nation, and so travel is going to be increasingly led by millennials and Gen Z. And I believe they value experiential travel much more than anything else. So offerings that kind of bring to the forefront the rich diversity, the culture, and the varied experiences that India has to offer will be something that would be very important. Overall, growing affluence, growing smartphone penetration, the fact that more and more people are valuing experiential travel and wanting to do it in a very responsible way kind of sums up well in terms of future for the Indian travel industry.
Brands like yours have been highly disruptive, of course. And give me a sense of why perhaps homestays and these unique holidays and experiences seem to have gained so much traction in the domestic market, Amanpreet.
So homestays and unique accommodations is something that has found favor amongst a large population of India. And I think a lot of this has to do with the choices that people are making now. People are wanting to immerse themselves in local, authentic experiences and cultures. And I think this is where homestays have gained a lot more popularity. What has happened is during the pandemic, when the borders were shut, a lot of people wanted to travel within the country. So road trips became a big phenomena. And when they were exploring the country and exploring their own backyard, newer destinations, rural towns and places which had more activities came into prominence. And I think that has created a very positive momentum towards the choice of homestays per se as a category. What we also saw during the pandemic is that a lot of people wanted more control over the space that they were living in. They wanted to reconnect with the family once it was easier for people to travel. And hence they were booking entire homes, bigger places and entire villas with like pools. And so this category has gained a lot more popularity. The other thing is that as Airbnb, we have invested a lot in creating new upgrades. In fact, 300 plus upgrades in the last 18 months, 50 of them which were launched based on community feedback this May itself. And this is making it very easier for people to become hosts, list their primary or secondary spaces on the platform, but also for the guests to discover these places with tools like categories, as well as other unique accommodations that are prominently displayed on our platform. This has created more interest for people to kind of book homestays. I believe homestays add a lot of economic value also. For example, it's creating micro-entrepreneurial opportunities. It's creating primary and secondary income for a large portion of hosts on the platform. And this number is increasing year after year. And so it's a significant contribution. What we've also seen is that when people stay in homestays, when people stay in these neighborhoods, it helps disperse tourism dollars to newer communities. So for example, the local grocer in the neighborhood would benefit when people come and stay in that neighborhood with hosts. The local artisan will benefit. They'll be able to sell their craft to a larger audience. And people tend to stay longer when they tend to stay in homes. So overall, the economic benefits of creating more jobs, more livelihood opportunities, as well as creating more sources of income is a big value add when it comes to homestays. And that is what is attracting a lot of new hosts on the platform. And platforms like ours make it easier for people to host. And I think we'll continue to work on making it easier for people to discover new places and also for people to list their homes in a very productive manner.
What are some of the trends that you're seeing at Airbnb you can talk to us about?
So definitely we are seeing a resurgence of travel as we are, getting into a period where the pandemic is receding. What we have seen is there is a lot of pent-up demand for people to connect back with families. So one of the key trends that we witnessed in 2022 as well as what we are seeing in 2023 is the spike in family-led travel. So a lot of people, in fact, family-led travel grew by almost 110% for us in last year versus the previous year. And this is clearly a signal that a lot of people want to travel with their family members, book entire spaces, enjoy pools, enjoy farm stays, and kind of have a good time maybe during a weekend or for extended holidays. So that's a key trend that we've seen. The other trend that we're seeing is solo travel is also on the rise. Solo travel almost doubled if I were to compare 2022 versus 2021. And clearly a lot more people are looking at value for money options and wanting to immerse themselves in local cultures, go to newer places, whether in India or abroad. And I think that's also a trend that I believe will, kind of create more opportunities for many entrepreneurs in the future. One more key trend that I've seen is in terms of numbers that we've seen is outbound travel is now back. Given that, a lot of people could not travel earlier because of border controls and, restrictions in terms of their movement. As those things have eased, we have seen that outbound travel from Indian guests on Airbnb has doubled in this quarter versus last quarter. And I do believe that this is quarter ending January, February, March. And so I do believe that a lot of people are now looking at international destinations and are wanting to explore newer places. In fact, if you look at the number of passports that are increasing in India, we add about 10 million odd passports every year. We have about 100 million passports in India. So clearly the young population in India is very digitally connected and wants to explore newer places across the world. And a global platform like Airbnb makes it very easy for them to choose neighborhoods or homes or hosts that they can go and explore. So overall, I do believe that, travel is increasingly led by millennials and Gen Z. They value experiences more, and platforms like Airbnb make it much easier for people to immerse and themselves in local cultures and then explore newer neighborhoods and newer homes, as well as unique accommodation options everywhere in India.
The travel and tourism space naturally took a big hit during the pandemic, the government even having to step in to give some sort of a hand-holding and bailout. Small businesses were particularly hit, and they're, of course, hoping for a revival. If you can call out to predict how soon we could expect to see that revival coming in? What can you tell us?
I think the last couple of years have had a profound impact on the entire travel industry and all travel players. And I think as travel is returning back, we have a great opportunity for making travel to be more inclusive. And I think the changing consumer preferences that we have seen, for example, the fact that there is a rise in responsible and conscious travel, the fact that people are now moving towards choices which are more community-based travel oriented and ecotourism oriented, or anything that fosters more of outdoors, etc. I believe there is an opportunity for travel to disperse now from the traditional tourism hotspots and kind of benefit these newer communities. And I do believe that at the forefront of this are small business owners, hosts that are on the platform, micro entrepreneurs that provide services to guests when they travel to their destinations. And the travel recovery, the more we are able to involve them in this recovery, it's going to be very important. And so I do believe that it is very important that all key stakeholders in the industry, industry players like us, accommodation service providers, airline service providers, government stakeholders, everyone comes together with a single-minded focus on creating the rebound, which is more inclusive and holistic, so that we can really create a travel industry that takes into interest all key players of the ecosystem.
So Amanpreet, where are Indians traveling, both domestically as well as internationally? What can you tell us?
That's an interesting question. We are definitely seeing a lot of interest in newer destinations. In fact, what we saw in the pandemic was the fact that a lot of people explored domestic destinations because they could not travel abroad. That's a trend that is continuing to stay. So if I were to look at some of the trending destinations, it's the kind of diversity that India has to offer. We see a good blend of hill stations like Kullu, as well as beach destinations like Goa. That's an all-time favorite through the year. But also metro cities. A lot of people are now taking staycations over the weekend. So cities like Pune, Bangalore, Hyderabad are also something that people are searching for. If I were to just look at some of the trending searches for summer this year, Puri, Odisha is now trending top here. So a lot of people want to go to this coastal town. A lot of off-beaten destinations, off-the-beaten-path destinations are also finding favor. So places like Jibi, Haldwani are something that a lot of people are now looking for. So I think in India, we'll see travel dispersed to newer cities, as well as some of the older traditional hotspots will continue to get travel interest.
All right, good as always chatting with you. And here's hoping that everyone gets to travel to at least the one fantastic place here in FY23. Thanks for your time again, Amanpreet. I'm going to take a quick break. On the other side, a conversation with Ixigo, continuing our focus on the travel space. We're going to bring you a travel aggregator's perspective. More on that when we come back. Just stay tuned. Our second conversation tonight is with Ixigo to bring us a travel aggregator's perspective. Ritvika Gupta joining us with that interview.
Hi Aloke, thank you so much for joining us today, and I really hope to have an in-depth conversation with you about the travel sector, trends, challenges and opportunities.
Thank you for having me, Ritika.
So the theme for our show this season is Ideas for New India. So tell us, what are your 3-4 big ideas or trends, that you think are going to really shape the tourism and hospitality industry in the coming years?
So I think India has one of the biggest potential in terms of tourism, both domestic and international. I was looking at the numbers in terms of growth for domestic tourism. We are already at above pre-COVID levels on almost all sectors, whether it be air travel, train travel, or bus travel. And when it comes to hotels as well, we are seeing occupancies at levels that we've never seen before in the industry. So this boom is actually naturally being led by people coming out of COVID with the desire to travel. But we've seen Indian tourists really start to take multiple trips a year, and the evolution of the smaller towns, tier 2, 3 travelers who have now started becoming more aspirational, taking more frequent trips, spending more on their trips, upgrading their trips. I think that trend line is very, very exciting, at least from the vantage point that we look at this industry from. If we look at also the foreign tourist arrivals, that's the other big theme. I think India is an undersold destination. We have one of the richest cultures in the world. We have great food. We have so much to do in this country, but we have historically, sort of undermarketed ourselves. And with the improving infrastructure, the promise of what we are able to deliver on the ground, the gap that used to exist in the past between what we used to sell as a story and what infrastructure exists on the ground, that gap is also closing now. And I expect foreign tourist arrivals to skyrocket from here. In fact, this year, we are expecting to reach the pre-COVID levels of foreign tourist arrivals as well in this country, and exceed it from next year onwards. So I think that trajectory will be very interesting to see from here, given the fact that we have the infrastructure improving, we have roads and connectivity improving to our key leisure destinations. We have more airports. We've opened almost 50 new airports during the last 3 years, right? And we expect to open 100 more airports as a country, within the next 3 to 4 years. And I think most of these airports are tier 2, 3 cities that were not connected or remote areas. You look at the Northeast, you look at Odisha, you look at Chhattisgarh, the connectivity improvement with that these airports are driving is phenomenal, right? And the third one, I think, is really, how people are taking up, road travel in a big way, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's people driving out on their own, but also how buses are growing in the country, right? And we've seen that's our fastest growing vertical at ixigo. We've seen phenomenal growth last 12 months on bus capacity deployment and people actually using that as an alternate to train travel in the country. So I think these 3 mega trends that we've seen will continue to play out.
Aloke, it's been reported that your revenue crossed 500 crore rupees in FY23 and you're currently targeting 40% growth. What would you attribute this growth to, and what are the strategies for the year ahead?
Yeah, I think much of this growth is coming from the ability to drive better monetization from our existing large user base. So just so ixigo is one of the most downloaded travel apps, not just in India, but in the world. We were the 8th most downloaded travel app in the world last year as per data.ai. And so we already had this massive volume of users coming to us for utility use cases like checking where a train is, finding out more about your train status, your PNR prediction, your bus information, flights. So we were already a pretty popular app. I think in the last few years, we became more transactional and we started monetizing by actually selling train tickets as well as value-added services. So much of this growth is now being driven by the deepening penetration of our ticketing business in tier 2, 3 towns. From really tier 3 towns, we are seeing, bus ticketing, train ticketing growth, but we are also seeing flight bookings now starting to come from, places like Jharsuguda or, Darbhanga, which never had an airport, never had connectivity, but were already using ixigo for multiple use cases on the trains and bus side, and today have started booking flights. And last but not the least, the value-added services I mentioned, right? So ixigo Assured, ixigo Flex, these new products that we launched on top of the ticketing layer, which improve the customer experience by giving faster refunds, instant refunds, full refunds, or allowing the flexibility to change the ticket as the customer wants, right? So these kind of value-added services are also contributing meaningfully to our top line and bottom line growth.
Tell me, Alok, how has the consumer sentiment changed over the last 2 years when it comes to travel? What are the traits of the post-pandemic traveler?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think we've seen a fundamental shift in how consumers are thinking about travel, right? So it used to be largely a utility use case for much of India, right? Except for the top, I would say the top 5% of the country that could afford to have a more aspirational view on travel, and leisure travel was actually largely that layer, pre-COVID. But if I look at, the people who are traveling in the last 3 years and where all they're going to, it looks like the country is becoming more aspirational in terms of how they want to use up that time, right? And the fact that COVID kind of told people that, you have only one life to live, and there was this whole YOLO thing that essentially everybody said you only live once, and therefore you should not think about putting it on your bucket list. You should actually go and take that trip today. I think that's something we are seeing not just in Gen Z, but also, in the millennials, where people are taking more frequent trips a year. It used to be like 2 to 3 trips a year pre-COVID, and we are seeing now people take 4 to 5 trips a year. But we are also seeing the wallet size, share of travel actually go up. So we've seen people upgrade the experience. Some people who were traveling economy, traveling on premium economy, or there were people who were actually doing a domestic trip and willing to invest in doing an international trip. Folks who were earlier booking, 3-4 stars, many of them,
Sure.
want to book a 5-star and experience that luxury. So I think we are seeing that willingness to spend on travel and looking at travel as an experience that you're spending on. In fact, travel is one of the few things you actually spend on that makes you richer with the experience on the other side. And that's the way I think a lot of Indians are now looking at this.
Finally, tell us, what are the biggest opportunities and challenges that you see in India's travel sector?
Yeah, I'll talk about opportunities first. So I think the biggest opportunity we have as a country is to continue to invest in our infrastructure and take it to world-class levels. I think the good thing about India is that our service mindset and our hospitality, kind of benchmarks, right, are already world-class or better than most countries in the world. If you go to a 5-star hotel in India, the level of service that you get is actually better than a 5-star hotel anywhere in
Absolutely.
the world. Even our airlines, most of our airlines, actually offer a better experience as a low-cost carrier than any other country globally. And I think the experience on buses similarly has improved. If you go in a high-end bus today, take a Volvo, or if you take a fresh bus, you will see the kind of experience that can be delivered even on the road. And I think this kind of ability to improve our infrastructure, improve the levels of service, improve the customer experience is what it will take to deliver the promise of travel. Because the challenge in this industry has always been that there are moments where you let the traveler down, you let the customer down, because you're not able to handle a scenario that nobody thought about, because things can go wrong at the last minute, right? Something could get cancelled, something could get delayed. Some unforeseen thing can happen, in a travel use case, because it's very dynamic. And how you handle those situations as a brand, how do you handle that, as an infrastructure provider? I think those things really matter in improving and lifting the customer experience here.
Well, it was great chatting with you, Alok. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be with you.
All right, that was Ixigo with a deep dive on the travel aggregator's perspective. For tonight, it's a wrap. For those of you watching at home, thank you so much for watching. If you want to send us any feedback, here's how you do that. Our details on your screens as I speak. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.